Bienvenidos a la noche cósmica de la oveja eléctrica, aquí en Canal 22, en donde hoy vamos a hablar con el destacado físico italiano Carlo Rovelli, en una serie de 3 programas, sobre la perspectiva de la física como un tejido de interrelaciones. A esto se le llama física relacional. Rovelli dice que debemos abandonar algo que nos parecía completamente natural, la simple idea de un mundo hecho de cosas. Todo objeto o sujeto es una expresión efímera de una red de relaciones. Sus propiedades existen en relación a algo más. Todo es lo que es, solo en relación con algo más. Se trata de un maravilloso universo en el que nada existe por sí mismo. Esta es una perspectiva con la que Rovelli trata de entender desde el mundo de lo más grande de lo grande, descrito por la teoría de la relatividad general, hasta el mundo de lo más pequeño de lo pequeño, descrito por la física cuántica. Pero también nos permite entender más ampliamente quién es el personaje Carlo Rovelli con relación al tejido de sus amistades y maestros. Uno de ellos, fundamental, fue el gran escritor y editor Roberto Calasso. Carlo Rovelli is an outstanding Italian theoretical physicist. He is one of the first explorers of loop quantum gravity that tries to integrate 2 windows of our understanding of nature. One that explains the phenomena in the larger scales through general theory of relativity, and the other that delves in the minimalist world of subatomic particles of quantum physics. He is the author of several brilliant books, such as 7 Brief Lessons on Physics and Helgoland, Making Sense of the Quantum Revolution, and The Order of Time, very recently translated into Spanish. The 7 Lessons book have been translated in more than 41 languages, but what is more relevant for me is that the late Roberto Calasso, one of the finest publishers and writers, said this to Rovelli: "Carlo, I read what you wrote, I like it. Whatever you write that you think important, send it to me. If you have true things to say, I'll publish them." And Carlo Rovelli has really something brilliant to say in the domains of curiosity, knowledge, and passion for understanding our world, our universe. Welcome to the electric ship, La Oveja Eléctrica, in Channel 22 in Mexico, Carlo.
Thank you very much, Jose, for this very kind, very generous introduction.
And you know, one of the main ideas you explore for understanding the different layers of time, of our world, of our universe, is the relational perspective. This also can apply to see how do you develop your knowledge in relationship to some people and ideas. We'll explore your relationship with Bryce DeWitt and John Wheeler, but let's talk first about Roberto Calasso. You said that Roberto referred to a passage of the Upanishads that he particularly loved, and you completed his quote by heart. What passage are you talking about, and how was the interaction and attraction between your different worlds?
Yes, thank you. It happened during the first meeting between me and Roberto Calasso. I had talked before with some people in his organization, in his publishing house at Delphi, about publishing some lectures of mine, some articles of mine, and becoming a book. So I've drafted this book that later became Brief Lessons of Physics. And I went to Milano and met him, and we started talking. And very rapidly, the conversation went away from the particular book and started rambling around what is knowledge, what is the intellectual world, what do we know about the world, what we do not know about the world. And I don't remember how the conversation went on the Upanishad, and which is a book that has been important for Roberto, but has also been important for me. The Upanishad are, of course, a part of the Veda and the sort of the philosophical part of the Veda, and one of the first major reflections about reality in Eastern thinking. A lot of later Eastern ideas that also influenced Western ideas came from the Upanishad. And the part he quoted is the beginning of one of the Upanishad, which is about the rituals. And it connects the part of the body of the animal, of the sacrifice, with part of the cosmos.
En los textos védicos se entiende como sacrificio no una inmolación real, sino un ritual simbólico en donde el animal representa un proceso de transformación y manifestación de la materia en el cuerpo del cosmos. Así, Roberto Calasso señala en el libro titulado Ardor que los textos se convierten en astillas luminosas en donde arde el fuego del conocimiento. Así, la aurora, el amanecer, es la cabeza del caballo sacrificial. El sol, anticipando a Goethe, es el ojo, el viento, el aliento. La boca abierta es el fuego elemental, su relincho es el habla misma y las estrellas son sus huesos. Cuando bosteza, el cielo relampaguea. Cuando se agita el caballo, los truenos retumban.
So the head of the horse is the sun, and so on like that. And there is this very non-scientific, very mythical way of thinking expressed in an extraordinarily powerful way in which it connects something which is happening in a sacrifice with the cosmos as a whole. And it was a passage that that impressed me and remained in my heart, and remarkably also for Roberto Calasso was very important. I didn't know, but he talked about that in one of his books. So immediately we found some deep resonance. Me as a scientist, he as a publisher and a man of vast culture. And I think this is a little bit the key of also the books that I've done with him and he has published. I talk about physics, but not strictly within the technicalities of the physicist. I don't think that physics is just mathematics or experiments. It's our effort of thinking reality and is in a dialogue with culture as a whole.
La realidad se interpreta como un tejido de interrelaciones, un diálogo en las diversas capas de la cultura como un todo. ¿Qué mejor ejemplo que el diálogo entre el mundo del mito y la literatura en su máxima expresión con el gran ensayista y editor Roberto Calasso y el destacado físico Carlo Rovelli? Ambos enfoques están vinculados por la curiosidad, por el conocimiento, por el misterio del universo. Para entender la mirada de Carlo Rovelli, hay que explorar otros componentes de su cuerpo intelectual e imaginativo. Después del corte, veremos cómo lo marcó su relación con las ideas de dos grandes maestros de la física contemporánea, a quienes conoció personalmente. Como de rayo con tintes verdes y dorados, como los que aparecen en los textos más antiguos de conocimiento, estamos de regreso en la noche cósmica de la oveja eléctrica, aquí en Canal 22. Estamos conversando con el destacado físico italiano Carlo Rovelli en torno al mundo de relaciones e ideas que marcan su pensamiento en la búsqueda de entender los misterios del tiempo, los misterios de la fuerza de la gravedad. Los intentos de unir el funcionamiento de la fuerza de la gravedad en el mundo de lo más grande de lo grande, descrito por la teoría de la relatividad general, con el mundo de las partículas subatómicas, se vinculan al desarrollo de una teoría de gravedad cuántica en la que fueron claves dos físicos a los que Rovelli conoció personalmente. Now let's talk about Bryce DeWitt and John Wheeler exploration of quantum gravity, about their equation without the variable of time, and the equation of your relationship and friendship with them and their ideas, because this is also a sort of relational perspective.
John Wheeler has been, and Bryce DeWitt, both of them, have been mythical figures for me, both very important. When I was a student in Bologna, I became fascinated with the problem of quantum gravity, the problem of, as you said at the beginning, the problem of connecting these two windows. I think you used a very good word, windows. We have found to look, to understand, to try to understand something about the physical world. We have two of them, and they don't talk to one another, and the big problem is to put them together. Bryce DeWitt and John Wheeler have been the great intellectual explorer of this merging of quantum and relativity. And together they wrote what is called the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, which has been our tool for trying to understand the problem, our main tool for many years, and still now is a basis on which we work. And I have memories of both. John Wheeler wrote me a letter. I received a letter from John Wheeler when I was a young scientist. I had published some articles, and I received a saying, "Dear Carlo, it's wonderful what you're doing. I'm following. I want to, please come and see me. We want to discuss." And you can imagine this letter is still hanging on the wall of my office. And every time I look at him, I think about John. John is not with us anymore. I miss him a lot. I went to see him in Princeton. He is the first person of that level that took my work seriously, and this for a young man like me was an immense step, of course. And something slightly different happened with Bryce DeWitt, which is I met him pretty early when I went to London, but I barely had the courage to talk to him. He was a great figure of the great scientist up there. I remember the first time I saw him, and various times I discussed physics with him. Was serious in his reaction, critical, interested, listening, but critical. And only later, reading his memories, I found out how much carefully he was following the kind of work in which me and my colleagues were involved, and how much he was sort of seeing with positive eyes to that. So these are my intellectual grandfathers, if you want. And the equation they've written, the famous Wheeler-DeWitt equation, has this feature that there is no time variable in the equation. There's no time in the equation. And this has opened a major problem, perhaps the entire problem of time, which I discuss in my book, The Order of Time, which is the sense in which time is not there at the fundamental level when we try to take into account both quantum and gravity. So they have begun opening our mind toward a different way of thinking about time, on which for decades then the research have built, and I think that their ideas were correct. Me and my colleague have been walking on the path that they have opened.
Nos encontramos, como dice el físico italiano Carlo Rovelli, con la extrañeza de que en el nivel fundamental de la naturaleza, el tiempo no está ahí. Esto lleva a paradojas como, por ejemplo, la de pedirle a un físico que nos demuestre en 10 minutos que no existe el tiempo. Lo cierto es que estamos hablando de varias capas del tiempo y de maneras distintas de pensarlo. Esto se vuelve evidente en una teoría que trata de integrar la forma en que entendemos la gravedad como hendiduras gigantescas del espacio-tiempo al nivel de hoyos negros, con las descripciones de esa fuerza en los niveles minimalistas de las partículas subatómicas. Una de esas búsquedas, echadas a andar por los maestros de Rovelli, desemboca en un trabajo en el que el físico italiano, junto con otros científicos, ha puesto toda su vida: el desarrollo de una teoría denominada gravedad cuántica de bucles. De ello conversaremos después del corte. Como de rayo con tintes verdes y dorados que trata de alumbrar los misterios del cosmos, estamos de regreso en la oveja eléctrica, aquí en Canal 22. Estamos conversando con el destacado físico italiano Carlo Rovelli sobre una forma distinta de pensar el tejido del espacio-tiempo. La teoría general de la relatividad nos habla de la gravedad como curvaturas o hendiduras de un lienzo cósmico invisible. Pero eso no se aplica al nivel de la física de partículas subatómicas. En la escala más pequeña, el espacio-tiempo podría concebirse no como una malla continua, sino como una especie de espuma formada por unos lazos o bucles entre tejidos que dan lugar a ese nivel de la realidad. This led us to loop quantum gravity to try to integrate general relativity and quantum mechanics to integrate in a big canvas of the net of space and time, the smallest bit of space and time. So please tell us about what is your take in this loop quantum gravity. How can we explain it to the general public?
This equation that John Wheeler and Bryce DeWitt wrote is an attempt to have a mathematical description of quantum gravity. And it was very rough, not very well-defined equation. In fact, it's an equation that doesn't work very well as they wrote it. And the effort then was to transform it into a mathematical, well-defined theory, and also on something that we can have an intuition and understand. And this has been the work of my life, to transform the intuition of Bryce DeWitt and John Wheeler into a well-defined theory. And so today we have, together with many colleagues of mine, including in Mexico, today we have a theory, loop quantum gravity, that is a rigorous version of their theory. And most importantly, we have an understanding of what is going on. And what is going on is this: the two sides of the story, relativity and quantum, tell us two stories that have to be combined. And the relativity tells us that space, the space in which we are immersed, the space around us, it's like a material thing. It's a thing. It's an object with dynamics. Einstein used the metaphor of a molluscus. We're immersed in a huge jellyfish, and which bends and stretch. And gravity is the bending and stretching of space in which we are. The reason things fall down is because space and space-time curve in such a way that things want to fall down. But then there's quantum theory, and quantum theory tells us that this physical space in which we have quantum properties, and the most important, most characteristic quantum property, the name itself says it, quantum, is granularity, the quanta, the grains. So a key consequence of quantum loop gravity or loop quantum gravity is that the space in which we are immersed is made by grains. You cannot cut space at infinity. At some point, there's a minimum size. There is this quanta of space. And so loop quantum gravity is a theory of this quanta of space. And you can imagine little minusculous, extremely small things, which are the quanta of space, which all together make up the space in which we are immersed. And they're connected. They know who is next to whom. So they make a sort of graph, which in the technical jargon of the theory is called a spin network, because we use spins, little numbers to characterize it. Networks, because it's a network. Once again, it's relation to these points. Relations is what matter. And this loop quantum gravity is a precise mathematical description of this quantum structure of space. The current effort is to try to derive physical consequences and apply the theory to the situation in the world where quantum gravity is relevant, to black holes, to the early universe, to find how the theory can allow us to explain this phenomena, and especially to find empirical support for the theory, confirmations of the theory, to verify that the theory is right. That's where we are.
Where are we now in this path of having verification or confirmation? Where are the lines where we could have some experiments that could prove this approach?
There are two directions which have been followed a lot. One regards the early universe. In the early universe, near the Big Bang, we don't know anything about the Big Bang. We know that in the past, the universe was very much compressed from cosmology. We can very well reconstruct the history of the universe for 13, 14 billion years. Before, we know it was very hot, very compressed, very dense. But to see what happened, we need a quantum theory of gravity, because that's a regime, a situation where gravity, relativistic gravity is relevant, Einstein theory is relevant, but also quantum mechanics is relevant. So we need everything together. So that's where we can test the theory. And the hope is to use the theory to describe what happened there and derive some consequences. And what happened there, according to loop quantum gravity, seems to be that the universe was not born at the Big Bang, but there was a previous phase. So there was a contraction, a contracting universe that got to a super dense configuration and then bounced up. So the Big Bang is really a big bounce. And this is what the equations seem to be saying. And there are some calculations that connect this initial bounce to what we see in the sky, the cosmic background radiations and what the astronomers see in the sky. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of detail that the astronomers are seeing in the sky, in the cosmic background radiation. So the hope is to connect the part of these details that we cannot figure out with the theoretical calculations from loop quantum gravity and show that they predict the right thing that we see. There's a lot of work, a lot of attempts. The observations are becoming more and more precise. I hope that in a certain number of years, there would be some possibility of supporting and say, okay, the theory is right because it predicts the right thing. This is one. And the other direction is black holes. Black holes are, if you want, the great novelty of these last decades, right? We have seen black holes in the sky. We have seen gravitational waves produced by black holes. So now we are sure that the universe is full of black holes. There are plenty of black holes out there. And on the one hand, we can describe them very well, but they're still mysterious because we don't know what is inside and we don't know what happened to a black hole in the distant future. Because we know it evaporates, becomes smaller and smaller, but we don't know what happened next. We need quantum gravity. So once again, quantum gravity should tell us what happened and predict that in the moment in which the black hole ends the evaporation, it should emit some signals which we hope to be able to compute and then to compare with what the astronomers, the radio astronomers see in the sky and see the things match. So we are in the moment, it's an emotional moment in which trying to see, okay, we have built a theory, is it going to work or not? It's not an issue of months, it will be years. I hope, how can I say, before dying, that some positive signals will come out.
Estamos hablando de una teoría que tiene otro enfoque para tratar de entender el Big Bang. Si hubo, por ejemplo, una fase anterior a lo que consideramos el origen del universo. Una teoría que trata de entender de manera distinta y de predecir lo que ocurre en los agujeros negros, que son otras de las fronteras de nuestro conocimiento del cosmos. Esto requiere un trabajo paciente y humilde ante los datos que corroborarán o no las teorías. En la siguiente emisión de la oveja eléctrica, seguiremos conversando con el destacado físico italiano Carlo Rovelli sobre la naturaleza del mundo, que más que como una escenografía hecha de objetos y cosas, él ve como un tejido, como una red de besos, de sucesos que se explican por sus interrelaciones. Y es el momento de dar un salto cuántico discontinuo, como el que se da en las imágenes de las películas de Charles Chaplin, con nuestro querido Fernando Rivera Calderón, en una sección en donde también salta el corazón con la aparición de la música y lo inesperado.
Todas las cosas son sucesos esas cosas que suceden y que pasan y se mueven. Somos tiempo condensado, tiempo en polvo enamorado, nuestras manos manecillas, nuestra hora han marcado. Todo llega siempre a tiempo, hasta lo que llega tarde. La materia solo es tiempo, es la llama mientras arde. Yo no sé si el tiempo pasa o uno pasa por el tiempo, como la ciruela pasa cuando no hay un contratiempo. Tiempo.